And like we said, also you'll do the monitor the chat. I appreciate you producing this too, because like sometimes I try to do it all. And it's like you forget what you're saying because you're looking at the chat or something. So
yeah, no problem. I'll monitor the chat. We can tell them, if they have any questions, to go ahead and
bring it up and
put those questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to kind of pick out the ones that are pertinent to the conversation at the time, and ask you if you're open to that.
Yep, that would be great, because it's in the middle of it. Let's just go, say, hey, or I always like to say too, if you have anything you want to add to what we're saying to elaborate on, that's a good one too. Not just questions, but elaborations.
That's great. Yeah. And like I say, if need be, maybe we can use a little time at the end to kind of catch ones that we weren't able to get to during the session.
Yeah, that'll be great. And I'll just turn it over to you, and you'll have some closing remarks, I'm sure. So
yeah. And then, as I mentioned, we do like to get feedback from our attendees. So I'll do a feedback demo of the app that we use to do that, and then we'll close it up.
Yep. Okay. And again, what time? I mean, I know you were sort of giving me a little leeway there, but I just, for purposes of what I should wind down around what, let's say you start at 1, I should be really finishing at 150.
Ideally by 150. Yeah.
Okay. So let me I'm just going to keep that in mind, because I'm, as a speaker, I'm so used to like ending right on time for what everybody wants. So, I'll do that 150. I'll end. And then you can and that'll be my ending, but then you can do the follow up and the questions at that point, right?
Yes. Now, are you willing to stay for the questions?
Sure. I'm available. Yeah.
So I think what we do is we would have them ask you the questions first, and then I'll do the feedback at the very end. So that way you're not having to hang around through the feedback.
And then I'll turn it over. I'll say, okay, Daryl, I'll just mention, thank you. I'm going to bring you back to Daryl or something like that.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for getting on early, because I always like to make sure these things work. So.
No worries. Yeah. I want you to feel comfortable, and, I want to be able to support you however you need me to support you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So, yeah, and it's fun when you have like smaller groups too, because you can do like the breakout sessions and all sorts of cool stuff. So, but to do a breakout session with 1,000 people would be a little. and let's report out from each group. Oh my gosh, that would take like 20 hours.
Be a little tough. If it's all right with you, Arnold, what I'll do is I'll right now I've got a waiting room set up, so folks that are joining are being placed in a waiting room, and then what I'll do is probably around 12:45 is I'll open that up and let the folks start coming in.
Okay, and I'll be happy to the chat and all that stuff. So they'll all be open at that point, right?
Yeah, they'll be on at that point,
and not be muted.
Yeah, I won't force mute anybody at that point. What I typically do is once we start the session, I kind of force mute them so they can't accidentally come off of mute while you're talking. Right. But in the time before the session starts, it's nice. We like to try to build community and engage with the attendees. So don't mind them coming off at that point. But once we start, I will lock it down.
Okay. And by the way, the polling thing should still be on, right? Because I see it on the screen.
You still see it?
Yeah, I still see it.
How about now?
I still see it.
Okay, so I think if you go to the bottom of your screen, it
says end polling.
Yeah, like if you click, you might have to do it yourself because you're a co-host.
Okay, so end polling.
Yes, you're seeing it differently than the audience will see it.
Okay, and then end polling, and then it says share results or relaunch polling.
So I will do that. So is it closed for you?
It's closed, although I still see this here. What percentage of your success in your job? And it says share results or relaunch polling.
So can you minimize that?
Can I? Oh, hold on. View. Where can I minimize? I can X out of it.
Go ahead and X out of it.
Yeah, I can close it. There you go.
Yeah, close out because I can still open it, and then because that's what I'm going to do is when it's time for the poll, I'm going to select it. I'm going to relaunch poll since we ran it once already for the test, and then I'll turn it off, and you may have to turn it off like you did yourself just now as well.
Okay, great. So you do a lot of these things, right?
Yes.
Sounds like. Pardon?
We host, we run a community online academy every Thursday. We've got
Mhm.
sessions from 5 a.m. all the way to about 9:45 p.m. Eastern time.
Wow.
Everything from, leadership discussions to wellness and fitness classes. And we do sessions for adults and for children. So we got 2 tracks.
So you
that
have
we
like a
run.
gigantic library that people
We-
could go to. So if you're a member, people can go into any of these. Like you just want to, you don't have to sit through this one necessarily. You could go later. Correct?
That's right. And you can go back and look at this one later. That's right. We've got, we've been doing this since March of last year. So, so we've accumulated quite a large video library of sessions, and folks can go on there and look at, an old session from March, or look at, sessions from today, or whatever they want to see.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, my setting is okay with you, right? The
Yeah.
lighting and all that.
Screen light looks good.
Mhm.
Volume looks good.
Yeah, I
And
need
you
more
said each-
plants and stuff in that back, but
And you said no slides, right?
no slides. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been having sometimes when I do slides, it throws it off track a little bit too, because then it's just the slide, and it's unless it's a great slide or something. I don't know.
It certainly provides some more technical challenges potentially. So that's nice.
Right. I wanted to make your job easy today. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do enough of these. I said, you know what? Somebody's got to give them a break. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not the most tech savvy guy either, so it's probably more of a challenge for me than most. But
yeah, I said. Yeah, and sometimes when you want to share something, the screen doesn't share it right. It's like, oh boy. And then anytime there's a drag in there, people's attention spans there's attention spans are so short these days that it's literally about 8 seconds, where if you don't get it right away, it's like, okay, I've had enough of this. So, and while you're trying to throw that slide up, which really didn't matter in the first place, it's like, yeah, and I'm used to, and when I do these in person, I'm used to having like just a picture on a slide anyway. There's no more than 5 words on any slide. That's sort of like a rule of thumb. And so it's, and actually I find out people learn a lot better when they write something down too. So I actually try to explain that.
Totally. I think too, like in the virtual environment too, when you're looking at somebody, it's kind of like being in the same room. So as opposed to looking at a slide, so it's more interactive. And I think people definitely.
Yeah. And have you ever seen these slides which have a million things on them, and it's like you can't even read them. They're like so small.
I've probably been guilty of creating a few of those myself.
Yeah. So I've learned. Actually, one time I said to a group, I said, well, I'm not going to have any PowerPoint today. And they all got up and gave me a standing ovation. So it's like, I think they had enough of it. So I said, man, that's a good way to get a good review right away. So,
Arnold, it looks like we've got about 65 people in the waiting room now. So I'm going to start admitting them.
Okay.
And we'll let them join. And then we'll obviously have more join up until we get started here at 1. So let me do that. And you'll see some more people start joining.
Excellent. And I'll see some of them. Yep. I see a cat there too. Oops. Good morning.
Welcome everyone to Community Online Academy. Good to have you here. We're going to get started at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Sure, we've got a lot of familiar faces in the house. Any first-time Community Online Academy attendees? If you're a first-time Community Online Academy attendee, can you let us know in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, you can let us know. Welcome to everybody. We always like to see
Delaware.
our newcomers. Welcome from Delaware there. Good. Well, welcome.
First time. Got some first time. Oh, I see.
Hi.
I see Janice. There she is.
Hi, everybody. I spoke for you back in a couple months ago, October, I think.
Yeah, Janice is everywhere. I've seen her.
I don't see Janice, but hi, Janice. I don't see you yet.
I'm waving.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Janice. How are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Daryl. By the way, Arnie, Daryl is the best.
I don't know about,
tell
I don't know
already.
about that.
I can tell already. Yeah, he gets along well. So
Yes.
So good to see you, Janice.
Good to see you too.
Welcome, everybody. So we got some more folks joining. We're gonna
I
get
feel
started.
lucky that I got into the meetings because it was sold out.
So it was. So we actually are going to do a YouTube live stream as well for those that can't get into the Zoom. So it's not as nice as the Zoom because we can't see those folks, but it is, you at least be able to get to see the presentation from Arnold. So. Right.
Where's the music?
I guess that's my cue for some announcements, I suppose. So
yeah, where's the announcements? Yeah.
So for particularly for the first timers, all our Community Online Academy sessions are recorded. So we're gonna record this session and it'll be posted on the Video Hub. So if you want to come back and look at it later, you'll be able to find it there. I'll put links into the chat where you find that. And then we also have recently our team created a Community Online Academy, a COA app that allows you to view these videos and access the Video Hub from your portable devices, your iPads and your phones. So I'll drop those links in as well for you. Also, something that's new here at the Community Online Academy is we are now on Instagram. So I don't know if anyone is on Instagram, but definitely want you to check us out at This Is COA. So I'll put that link in there as well. So I'll probably bombard you with some announcements in the chat, but I encourage you to take a look and please go to those links.
By the way, I mentioned Janice is joining us today too, and she wrote a great book called Banish Burnout, which is on stress and burnout. And I know she'll probably add something to add today. So you'll hear some extra good stuff today. So
we make a great team, Arnie.
yeah. See some first timers here. Just for curiosity, is anybody, I just want to know where everybody's sort of from. If you could put in the chat box, just for curiosity, where you're coming from. Dallas, Las Vegas. Boy, everybody, Morocco. Boy, somebody's from Morocco today. That's a long way away.
Yeah, we get folks from all over the world. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It'd be tough if we were doing this in person, I'll tell you. Pocatello, Idaho, Tampa. All right. Tampa.
Austin, woohoo, hook 'em horns, Austin. I went to UT.
Yeah.
All right.
Richmond, OJ, California, UK. Boy, Rumford, East Sussex. A lot of UK. Mass, Houston, Atlanta, Ipswich, Wales. But I can't read fast enough here.
Houston.
All our regulars are very familiar with our feedback app that we use to collect feedback. For all the first timers out there, we at Community Online Academy, we love to get your feedback because we want to make these sessions better. We want to add stuff to the curriculum that you want to see. So we're very interested in getting your feedback. So at the end of this session, I'm going to do a feedback demo, and we're going to ask you to use the feedback app to give us that feedback. So I'll give you that demo. Like I say, the regulars are probably very familiar with that, with using the feedback app. For those that aren't, you'll see the demo. And then what I'd like to do now is I'd like to share my screen briefly here. And I will, for those of you that haven't had a chance yet to download the feedback app, I'll have a slide that will show you how you can do that. So let me share my screen. Arnold, if you'll let me do that here for a moment.
Sure.
And we can show this to the folks. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Get it set up here. Here we go. So again, welcome everyone to Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere with our speaker, Arnold Sanow. So we're going to get started here at 1 p.m. But as I mentioned, the feedback we'd like to get. So if you haven't had a chance to download the Feedback Labs app, here's how you can do it. If you have an Apple product, you can see the QR code on the upper left. Will take you to the App Store where you can download it. And on the right, you have the Google Play Store. That'll, if you have an Android product, you can get the Feedback Labs app there. So I'll leave this up here for a few moments. All you have to do is pull out your phone, take your camera and scan those QR codes, and it'll take you right into where you need to go to download that app, and you'll be ready to use that at the end of the session. As you're downloading the app and logging into the app, if you have any problems, please feel free to reach out to our help desk. You can see it hopefully at the bottom of the screen there. It's COA Help Desk at nextjump.com. So I'll leave this up here for a few moments and let folks that want to do that, download the app, do that now.
Thank you for choosing Allstate, where you're in good hands. My name is Karen. With whom am I speaking today?
All right, so hopefully everyone that wanted to use this, I got a chance to do that. I'll stop share. And I can put that back up later if anyone needs that. I'm not sure if we have anyone out there that has kids that participate in our Kids Club program, but we're actually have an enhanced Kids Club program going next week, mainly aimed at the kids in the UK who many of them are on their half-term break next week. So we wanted to kind of increase the offerings next week. But it's open to obviously children in the US and other areas. Time permitting, and so be aware there's an enhanced Kids Club schedule if you're interested in that for your kids for next week. We're running that from Monday through Friday next week. And hi again, everyone who's joining us. Good to see everybody. We're gonna get started here in about 4 minutes. I mentioned putting some of those links in the chat, so I'll do that now. If some of you are new to using Zoom, the way you can open the chat window, if you're not familiar, is at the bottom of your screen. You should have a menu of options, and one of them should be chat. So if you click on that, it'll open up a window. For me, it's on the right side of my screen where I can view the chat. And I mentioned previously, many of you probably joined since I mentioned this, but during the session with Arnold, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, and I can ask those questions to Arnold on your behalf. So please take advantage of the chat for that. There should be a few minutes at the end also for a little Q&A as well, but happy to take questions throughout. So if you have them, please use the chat for the questions. And hopefully you can now see some of the notes I put in there. So again, it's a link to our Video Hub where you can access all the videos from the Video Online Academy. There's also links to our COA app, how you can download that. And then I mentioned Instagram. So there's our Instagram tag at This Is COA.
That's it.
So I also wanted to put in the chat here a generous offer from Arnold. So anyone who signs up for Arnold's free 2-minute tips e-zine will get a free PDF electronic copy of his book, Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere: 8 Keys to Creating Enduring Connections with Customers, Coworkers, and even kids. So you can sign up via the link here that I'll drop in the chat. So that's going in there now as well, if you're interested. Hopefully you can all see the chat. Just looking through the chat, we've got folks again from all over the world. It's pretty cool. We see that every week here at COA. And again, for those new at COA, we run sessions every Thursday from 5 a.m. Eastern time all the way to 9:45 p.m. Eastern time. Everything from classes on leadership to wellness to fitness classes. We've got both an adult track and a kids track. So if you're first timer here at Community Online Academy, hope to see you again. So with that, it is 1 p.m. So we will go ahead and get started. I know more people are joining here, but let me again welcome everyone to Getting Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Arnold Sano. Arnold works with leaders and teams to help them get along better with customers, coworkers, colleagues, and stakeholders by improving communication, interpersonal relationships, emotional intelligence, presentation skills, and other people-related challenges. Arnold is the author of 7 books to include Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere, Present with Power, Punch, and Pizzazz, and the recent #1 Amazon bestseller, Leadership in Trying Times. He has delivered over 2,500 keynotes and professional development programs and is rated by Successful Meeting Magazine as one of the top 5 best bang for the buck speakers in the USA, and by his peers as one of the top 30 global gurus in communication. Please join me in a warm Community Online Academy welcome for Arnold Sano. And this is the way we do our welcomes here at the Virtual Online Academy here with the jazz hands. So welcome, Arnold. Very happy to have you with us today.
Great. Well, I'm glad to be here. And I'd like to start off with a poll. And I want to ask you a question. Think, what percentage of your success, of people's success in their job, is attributed to your communication, your people skills, and your get along skills? So if you can see the poll there, I'd like you to go ahead and just fill in what number that you feel like, what percentage of your success is attributed to those soft skills, so to speak. So take a second and do that.
It looks like people are putting it in there now. Arnold, I don't know if you can see that on your screen.
Yep, you can see them right here. It's got a few more seconds to see what people came up with. I think we're getting most of them there.
Looks like we've got about 80% of the votes in.
Get a little bit more, just see, but I think you're all right on this. So let me, while you're doing that, let me go ahead and there was a study by Harvard and Stanford University a while ago that basically said that, to put this in a perspective of what you have, is that only 15% of your success in your job in relation to building cooperation, getting things done, creating a positive environment will due to those technical skills, the skills that you learn in school type of things. And 85%, so those of you who said 85%, I see about 60% of you said 85% will depend on your communication, your emotional intelligence, and your ability to get along when you really boil it down to it. Now, by the way, when I said 15% your technical skills, let me just say one thing here too, because people get this mixed up. If you're not technically competent let's just put it this way, you won't have a job. You can be the nicest person in the world and you still won't have any job. But the point is 85% of that will really depend on what we're going to talk about today, which is that to get along, you need to work on your communication, emotional intelligence, and people skills. And Daniel Goldman, who wrote the book in Emotional Intelligence, stated, we're judged by a new yardstick, not just only how smart we are by our training and expertise, but also how well we handle ourselves and each other. And it's interesting, in working with companies over the last 30 years, I find that 90% of the reasons that people don't get along boil down to a few reasons. They're due to communication breakdowns relating to misunderstandings, misinformation, miscommunication, or mistrust. And a University of North Carolina study that came out a while ago said the average person loses about 7 weeks of productivity because of troublesome and unresolved communication and personality issues. And it's interesting because one of the companies I worked with a long time ago was a company called Agilent Technologies. It's out in the Silicon Valley in California. And I always ask the president or somebody who I'm sitting next to, I say, well, how does this getting along and communication all relate to making people work together and get along better? And Bill Sullivan, who was there, he said, and I liked his quote, and you might want to remember this. It sort of hit me in the head when I heard it. He said, 50% of all our obstacles to success center around team dynamics. And then he said this, he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So remember that 50% of all our obstacles center around team dynamics, and culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when you talk about culture, people sort of get mixed up on what culture means, but culture is the core values, the attitudes, the beliefs that people agree to live and work by in a company. So for example, the first thing I ever do when I start working with a company is we do something called ground rules and guidelines. And you may want to try that. And we sit down and we get, okay, what are the attitudes, the values, the beliefs we want to work and live by? And that can't just be directed at somebody from afar. So you need to take a look at that. And to take this a little further too, and some of you probably heard this, but think about this in your own perspective. Why did you ever leave a company? Because a lot of you probably, I'd say raise hands, but I can't see everybody here. But when you say, why do you leave? And it's interesting, over the 30 years and observations and studies, people join companies, but they leave the managers. And I bet if I asked you to raise your hand, a lot of you would probably say that's probably true in that case. So, and the key right now too, furthermore, in the challenging environment we have right now, everyone is doing more with less. And in this fast-paced world, what happens is a lot of times the niceties get lost. And a lot of the things that we do that why we don't get along is inadvertent. We don't mean to be rude, for example. We don't mean to disown people. So for a good example of this, let's say, for example, Francine, and I don't mean to pick on Francine here, but I just saw her there. So let's say Francine's my boss, and I'm just walking down the hall and I say, good morning, Francine. And she says nothing. You ever had that happen? Somebody you say something to and they say nothing, especially your boss. So if I'm her employee, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, okay, she hates me. Am I going to lose my job? I'm perceiving it as a slight. I have all these things, and it just bothers me for days on end. And the point is, Francine is probably just a nice person. But she misses the key. And part of what we're going to talk about today too is you really need to be in tune. And this is of what people, of people are self-aware of the people around you. And I'm just making a point. And every time somebody says to me, I make sure I say something, because if I don't, they're going to come up with all their types of conclusions and ideas based on that. And it's interesting too, when I talk about inadvertent, one of my clients a long time ago, I do some work for like car dealerships, and a lot of the car dealerships are owned by or run by past football players and baseball players. And we went out to dinner one night. Everybody there is yelling and screaming, and they're having a great time. And and I just noticed one of the things halfway through there, I noticed that people, when they came in to sit in our room, they'd all said, can we sit in another room? Can we sit in another? They kept moving into want to move a room. And then I realized that, they don't think they're rude. We don't think we're rude doing this stuff. But the point is the yelling and the screaming and the stuff like that is perceived by everybody else. So the thing is, you really got to be aware of what's going around you. So what I want to do today is, no matter how well you get along, even a slight improvement in communication, everyday interactions, emotional intelligence, and understanding others will greatly enhance your relationships and your ability to get along with others. So let's get right into it here. And I'm going to just go into some key things. And what I want you to do on the chat box, If you have anything you want to elaborate on this, because this is not just about me today, this is about you and getting ideas, because the worst thing I hate to do is waste people's time. So if you have something you can add to what I'm saying here, please just put it in the chat box. And I know Daryl's going to cut in now and then and give some ideas. Or if you have a question, and depending on the time, I can do this while we're moving along. So while it's hot in your mind. So feel free to do that. So the first thing, to get along, let me guess, because people always ask me, well, what are the key things to get along? So let me give you some of the key things to get along. And the first one there is understand others first before having them understand you. And here's the key. If you want to build rapport, relationships, and connect with others, we need to communicate in the ingredients that others find is important and not just what we perceive as important. How many of you heard that term, treat people the way you want to be treated? Everybody says that. I see a couple hands raised on the amount of people I can see, but treat people the way you want to be treated, which is not really true. We need to treat people the way they want to be treated. And it's interesting because in the groups I work with, I do this little communication styles exercise, and you got to know the verbal, how to communicate with them verbally, how to communicate non-verbally, how to communicate with their body language, and all these things relate to that. So the first thing there is understand others first before having you understand you. And by the way, if you communicate to everybody in the same way, you're going to miss the boat about 90% of the time. You need to know where they're coming from and communicate in what they find as important. Second thing, and I'm going to give you 3 key things right there, and then I'm going to get into some other areas. It's not always what you say that matters. It's what you don't say. It's not always what you say that matters. It's what you don't say. And here's what I mean by that. People are not mind readers. People are wired to make snap judgments. We're wired to make assumptions. And by the way, if I had a group of you in person, I'd say, how long do you think it takes people to make up their mind about you? And I hate to tell you this, it takes milliseconds. And then you got to talk your way out of it. How many of you ever done that? Sometimes you just, you see somebody and you make up an instant impression, and then you find out you're wrong later too, which is not a good thing. But we're not mind readers. And let me just give you an example of this. I had a woman in one of the programs I was doing one time, and she was distracted. She was on the phone. She was not paying attention. So what's going through my mind? I think, okay, she's poor attitude. I don't like her. She's a bad employee. All those things were going through my mind. And then what happened? That was my instant impression. And then what happened? She came up to me after the session, and she says, I want to apologize for being on the phone, being tired. I was calling my son all day. And she says, I just have to let you know this. I have a terminally ill child. I'm a single mom. I was up all night with the child because of certain sick circumstances. And as soon as she told me that, guess what happened? I had a whole different opinion. So the thing is, if you know something in advance, if I'd known that in advance or known something like that, it would have been totally different. So remember that saying, it's not always what you say that matters. It's what you don't say. By the way, the reason I recommend you write some of these down is people remember things about 6 times longer if you write something down than when you don't. So that aspect of it. And by the way, if you do sign up for my email newsletter, I have these tips in all the time that you'll just get into your mailbox at different times. The third thing I just want you to keep in mind, if you want to get along with people well, is appreciation. Share appreciation. And here's what I mean by that. How many of you heard the word appreciate to be appreciated? And when I say that, Mark Twain used to say, I can live 3 months on a good compliment when you really boil it down to it. And think about how that, if you tell somebody you like them, guess what happens? They're thrilled for a week. They're just in heaven. And how do you feel? You actually feel good too. The thing oxytocin, the hormone starts playing into your mind if you say something good to people. So you want to share that appreciation. Southwest Airlines, for example, has a rule where you say 5 positive things for every negative thing that you have in that case. And a lot of people say, well, what, money, they ask people what motivates people, and appreciation always usually comes up first on the list. And a lot of people say money motivates. Well, money, let's put it this way. I won't do a job if you don't pay me enough money, even though I'm motivated. But the point is, is anybody, I wish I could see some answer, but has anybody ever been paid a lot of money, but you still hated your job, or you hated what you're doing, and you're not motivated? So you can get paid a lot, but you're not motivated. So there's a difference between motivating and what really motivates people too. And so here's a couple tips I want to give you right off the bat, that things you can do if you're not somebody who shares appreciation. Because just to give you an example, I'm not sure if any of you know this, but there's a term called 360-degree feedbacks. I do this with people. I'm a coach too, so I coach people. And when I do that, I work with an individual and I talk to the people above them. I talk to the people around them and I say, what do you think of this person? And then I get all this feedback and then I go to the person and give them directions to do. So I did this with one woman who was an executive at a company. She had about 20 employees. And I said, you had really good marks, but one of the marks you had low was an appreciation. And I said, well, why don't you show appreciation? And she says, well, I don't show appreciation because I don't need appreciation, which is not really a good thing to do. And you've got to look on the aspect. People need that, and it makes them better. So here's what you can do. 21 days in a row. What I recommend to my clients, every day, if you're not a person who says something nice to somebody, every day I would say, okay, put on your calendar, put in your iPhone, say something nice to somebody, thank you, something. And guess what? After about 21 days, it'll come out that it becomes sort of a habit. Although I was just reading, for those of you from England and the UK, basically, there's a study that came out of there that said you need to do 66 days to make it a habit, which I'd rather do 21 days than 66. That just takes too long to make it a habit. So anyway, I'll give you that. But that's the first thing, 21 days in a row, make that happen. And also, if you're a leader or a manager, something that's really powerful. I did this with a retreat. I do this with a lot of retreats. The first thing I start off is I ask the manager, the leader of the retreat, I say, I want you to say one positive thing about each employee, each person at the retreat. So you can say, Mary, I really appreciate that you helped me today. Dennis, I appreciate that you come in early all the time. All these things do make a difference that you have. So two things, the 21 day or the 66 day, if you're from the UK, I'm not sure which one you want to use. And the other one is the share something positive at your next meeting about each person. And if you want to go further, sometimes I have each person at the meeting share something positive about each other. And by the way, if you suggest that, people are going to go like, oh God, who hired this guy or whatever? Why are we doing this? But after they do it, they love it. And everybody feels great for the thing too. I just saw somebody text here, says, I heard it was 90 days. If you can do, that's 21, 66, 9. There's so many studies out there, but the key is you got to make it a habit. And it's got to be genuine when you do that. So those are three key things that I want you to take away right at this point to make it so. Understand others first before having them understand you. It's not always what you say that matters. It's what you don't say. People aren't mind readers. Tell them what you think. And the third thing is appreciation. Appreciate to be appreciated. So moving along, I'd like to, let's get into some specific things here too, going a little further. One of the things that I always suggest is a lot of people pick up verbal and nonverbal cues about you. And by the way, this is especially important in the virtual world. And here's two tips for you. If you're ever talking to somebody virtually, two things that will make your presentations or make it so people even listen to you or you look like you're in there is active listening. And what I mean by active listening is validate what they're saying and reflect back. So what you're saying is this, let them know that you hear them. And then watch out for those nonverbal cues that you're doing. So for example, let's say I'm talking to you today. You ever see somebody like this? They're talking to you and then they all of a sudden pick up their phone and they're looking at this, or they're doing something else, or somebody's off in the couch. And people pick this up, and it's really important. In the nonverbal world, those are two things that when we're doing all these Zoom calls and stuff that really do make a difference. Or they can hear that they're typing. I see this in one of the chats down here. All these things make a difference. And talking about getting along, this is just going to derail the relationships and connections that you have. So here's a formula to follow. Let me give you one to soften your image, to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy. And the first one is with the S. And what I mean by the S, so I usually have you guess, but I'm not going to have an interactive guess here today. But the first thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy, the S of soften is smile. And by the way, when I say smile, let's make this clear. If you do not normally smile, don't start doing it all of a sudden, because people wonder what you're up to. You ever have somebody come in and like, why are they changing like this? And it'll scare them. The other thing I would mention too is only smile when appropriate. If you have bad news or something, a good example of this, I saw this on the news years ago. There was a reporter, and he started off by saying this, he said, there's 5 deaths in Fallujah, and he had this weird smile on him. And it was like, he wasn't smiling, but it's a nervous reaction. But what do people pick it up? That this is, God, this guy's laughing about people dying. So it makes a difference on that. And by the way, for those of you who are on the phone all the time, one of the things I do with my clients, I did with one of the clients I was working with, I won't say the name, but we put a mirror next to every operator's desk in that area, and they had 47% less complaints that year, because what happened was this. People get on the phone. I don't have a phone. Well, they get on and they go ring, 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 ring. Good morning. How are you? They had to smile when they were looking in the phone. So they had a mirror on their desk, and they were not allowed to pick up that phone until they looked in it and smiled. So you this. I also see a note down here, suggest taking off your mask to smile. Obviously, that's a good thing. You know, they have these clear masks now. Is everybody familiar with that? They have these masks that actually come and you can see your face. So you may want to look up those sometime. So the first thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is smile. Next thing is open. And what I mean by open, for example, I am so conscious of how people perceive me that I keep my hands by my side no matter what, or in gestures like this. For example, let's say I get into a disagreement with somebody. And how many of you ever gotten a disagreement? You do this and they do this. It's like you against me at this time. So just pick it up, and it's just going to get worse. This is a very closed position. And I would recommend you have more of an open position to be more friendly and open. Third thing, so the S is smile, the O is open. The F to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is forward lean or focus. And by the way, when I say forward lean, I don't mean this. I don't mean leaning over and stuff, you know, down to your feet, but it's leaning towards the person you're dealing with. In the virtual world, when I say focus, this is hard, because what you should ideally be doing is have your computer up about shoulder height, and you should be looking right in the camera, which is actually, you know how you want to look at everybody else, which you know, and I have trouble with this too, but when you're making a major point, you may want to shift from looking at the people and look right in the camera to make your point. So forward lean or focus. The T, so it's SOF, the T is territory. And when I say territory, in America, this has nothing to do in the virtual world. This is when we're meeting people. But the ideal, this is American culture too, by the way. This does vary by culture, but in American culture, the ideal distance to be away from somebody is about 14 inches to 4 feet. So you ever have somebody like this, you know, and you're talking to them and you've got work go backwards, you move backwards and they keep coming. You move backwards and they keep coming. And they just don't get it. And all you want to do is, all he picked up is bad breath that whole time. You just want to leave. So beware. The next thing, to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy, the E is eye contact. And again, in American culture, the ideal time to keep your eyes on anyone is literally about 3 to 5 seconds. But don't start doing this. Don't start looking at your clock and get off of them, because it looks sort of weird. But I stay to the person till you finish the point. For example, just another side on this, I also wrote a book on presentation skills. And in presentation skills, you want to keep your eyes on the person until you finish the point. Then you move to somebody else. By the way, if you have a team, you should be looking at everybody. You ever gone to a team meeting and they look at just 1 or 2 people there and they never look at the rest of them? And what are those people thinking? They like me? They don't trust me? I don't, you know, we start going through our heads and making up the worst things possible about that. Also, when you're doing eye contact, again, this in the virtual world, make sure you're looking at that camera as much as you can. I know that's hard. As I said, I don't do it totally well in that case too. So that's another thing to take a look at in that case. And by the way, if you're on the phone, how many of you do this? Picture the people in your mind. So if I'm on the phone and I've never met somebody, let's say I never saw Francine, and Francine, you're going to be my person because you're the only one I can see, basically. So let's say I've never met Francine, or I've never met Dennis, or I've never met some other people out there. How many of you ever done that? You called somebody, and then you are looking at the phone, and you've never met them, and you you're supposed to create a picture in your mind of that person and talk to that picture. And then what will happen is your voice and your tone and everything will be a lot clearer. So picture that person in your mind. And then the last thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is nod, not nodding off. And by the way, I know we yawn a lot of times, we're tired, and that's a physiological reaction. It doesn't mean you're tired, but what happens is people start picking it up like they're bored, right? Or they don't care about what we're saying. And I want to give you a little trick, and maybe all of you can do this at wherever you're located right now. I want everybody to do this. Take 2 really deep breaths. and if you take 2 really deep breaths, what happens is the oxygen goes up to your head. And for about 20 minutes, you won't yawn. So I learned this, I did some work for the National Institutes of Health, and I learned this from some scientists, and it actually works pretty good, although I still yawn every now and then, but still, it works most of the time. So here's the point. The reason I gave you SOFTEN, SOFTEN, to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is if you don't do these things, first of all, you're not as approachable and people won't come up to you. You ever seen somebody who looks grumpy, for example, and they're not smiling, or they have their arms closed, or you ever been to a meeting where somebody says, are there any questions? And you wouldn't dare ask. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Because they look so grumpy. So again, you need to make yourself, so if you don't do these, you're not as approachable. And here's the second reason why you need to do these. People focus on you and not the message you want to get across. People focus on you and not the message you want to get across. So if you look grumpy, if you look tired, if you're looking down, okay, why is he like that? Why is he doing, things go through our heads and we don't start doing these types of things. So 2 things to keep in mind on that aspect of it.
So Arnold, a couple times have come up in the chat about directness, and some people are just more direct than others, and a question about how directness or being direct is perceived at work. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you say direct, it depends how you say things too. So has anybody ever said something you regretted just by, I can only see 2 hands, and then everybody hated you after that? So again, and so when we say about directed, let me give you a little acronym you may want to remember on how to say things in a nice way. Because, for example, let's say somebody's interrupting me at work, and I could say, Daryl, I'm busy right now. And I could say that directly, and guess what's happened? Daryl's going to leave, but he may not talk to me again. He may not ask me a question again. So I might say something like this. It's called the USA technique. So let me give you the USA technique. I might say, Daryl, I understand this is important to you. And by saying that, I'm sort of emphasizing with Daryl. Daryl, you're important. So I understand this is important to you when he interrupts me. The next thing I say, however, Daryl, here's the situation. I've got this report that's due out at 4:15 today. So what I'm doing here is I'm giving a reason. And by the way, managers who give reasons get a lot more compliance than managers who don't. But so Daryl, I understand this is important to you. And here's the situation. However, here's the situation. I've got this report that's due out at 4:15 today. And then the third thing is action or alternative. What, could we meet tomorrow at 4:30? Could you get lost and see Francine? I wouldn't say that, but I could say something else in that way. So an alternative. So I want you to remember that it's not what you say, it's how you say it a lot of times. So when you say directness, that's where a lot of people get in trouble, and somebody says it the wrong way. They perceive it as a slight. They take it the wrong way. We hate each other. We never talk to each other. And I go into companies, believe it or not, where people don't even talk to each other. So, and then we're starting from that point. They all start and they're eating in the morning. They're all eating breakfast at separate tables, and we're starting our 2-day retreat. So that's always exciting. But anyway, so and a lot of this goes back to what we're just saying here, your body language, your tone. And to take this a step further, a lot of this, when you talk about directness, really relates to the words you say. The words and language can derail relationships. So for example, words can hurt. We all heard that term, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt you. Well, they can. And there's an old saying, be sure to taste your words before you spit them out. How many of us think before we speak? And that's where we get into trouble, because we get so irritated by things. And I always like to say another term is look inward before lashing outward. Look inward. Why am I lashing out? Why am I getting so upset at this? Why am I, having a problem? So let me give you a few words and language that derail connections and relationships and cause people not to get along. And if you have others that you want to add, please add them into the chat box. And maybe Daryl, after I go through this, if people could add in other words that irritate people, I'd like to hear those. So here's some of them. The number one word, this was in the USA Today a while ago. They said, what is the number one word you hate? And 47% of Americans, they said the number one word they hate was whatever. So when somebody says, well, whatever, that just means, so I could say, whatever, Francine. And it's just dismissing Francine. It's, getting rid of her. A couple other words I would stay away from is the word no problem. And no problem, if you were born before 1982, that really bothers you. If you're born after 1982, it's not such a big no problem, just means no problem. But for example, one of the hotels, Ritz-Carlton, for example, when you go into Ritz-Carlton, they have a rule. You never say no problem, because if you go to the desk receptionist, you say, can you help me? And they'll say no problem. What goes through some people's heads? Well, was there a problem? So what they say instead is, anybody want to take a guess on that list there? Oh, it's my pleasure. There we go. Mesa. Yeah. Okay. I love the Ritz, somebody says. Anyway, moving on. So no problem. So get that out of your vocabulary, unless you talk to people who are younger, then that's no problem. How about, here's a few other words to take out of vocabulary. It is what it is. Anybody ever had, if you're in a meeting, somebody says it is what it is. Well, that means, okay, forget it. Your ideas, we're not going to try anything new. I love this one. You know, Francine, it's not personal. Well, you know what? It's personal. It's not personal, but we're going to fire you or something. So, you know, don't take it the way. Another word to watch out for, and versus but. And, you know, you did a great job, but, and as soon as you say but, what happens? It takes away everything you're saying previously. You did a great job. However, here's a few things that would make it even better. I would watch out for red flag words. Red flag words are, this was a good example of this. There was a woman in she was in the Senate office building, and she was a cashier, and she kept saying, what did she kept saying? She kept saying, thanks, dear. Thanks, honey. Thanks, dear. Thanks, hun. Thanks, dear. Thanks, hun. And eventually some guy said, well, I'm offended. This woman's calling me honey. And she actually followed a grievance. She actually, woman lost her job. And some of you are saying, well, don't take it so personally, whatever, but you do got to watch out what you say. So it may not bother you, but it does bother others. Labels, watch out for words like, well, that's unprofessional, or you have a bad attitude, because bad attitude means nothing. Unprofessional, if you say somebody's unprofessional, say unprofessional because of this, this, and this. I would also watch accusing people. By the way, these are not just good for work. These are good for your family life if you want to have a happy relationships with others. Watch out for the word accuse. You accusing people. You did this or you did that. As soon as you say you to me, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to get defensive, and I'm never going to agree with you at that point. And by the way, when you say accusing, just to give you an example of this too, is anybody sarcastic in there, just by show of hands or on the chat here? Yes, yes, I'm seeing some yeses there. Okay, and I'm a little sarcastic too, I admit it. I think more than two are raising their hands. Oh boy, I got to get off this soon with all these sarcastic people, but I'm a little sarcastic too. And when I say sarcastic, how many of you ever gone and said something sarcastic to somebody, but they didn't get it? And then they start hating you for life and they'll never talk to you again. And I think you really got to take a look at that. So if you're sarcastic, make sure you talk to somebody who actually gets it. And this gets into another thing too, by the way. There's a John Gottinger, who's a Gottinger, I think, who's a psychologist. He mentioned the number one reason that marriages fail, and I'm sure some of you may want to hear that, but this sort of relates to work too. But he said the number one reason of failure of marriages was contempt. And contempt is like rolling your eyes, being sarcastic, somebody saying, well, that was really funny, which, they're being that tone, derogatory tone, derailing you, dismissing you, destroying your credibility and stuff like that. So just be careful of that. And for those of you, a little tip for your home life, I put this next to my bed. I said, home is your sanctuary. And when you think about that, it's the one place that anybody in your home should not be yelled at, screamed at, sarcastic, anything in that area. So something, just a word to the wise from a home life type thing too. I would also watch out for big words. It's interesting too. I usually mention slang and profanity to watch out for, but there was this study out of England a while ago that came in that said people who, I don't know if anybody saw this, say if you saw this one, but they said that actually people who have a lot of profanity are smarter than the rest of us, and it connects people together. So I don't, but I'm not suggesting that. Don't even write that down that I'm suggesting you do this, but it's funny when you just keep looking at different studies. And then the three things I would really watch out for today are, anybody want to guess in the chat box, the three keys to just watch what you talk about? I'm looking for it in the chat box. Politics was one of them, right? No politics, because religion and sex, there you go. Because actually, when you get into politics, people get go off into crazy land. So I would do that. Race, all these things just to stay away from. And I think you guys got that. So those are some key things to look at. So by the way, did anybody, Daryl, did you catch anything else that people had for words and language to just avoid that get people not getting along?
I did. No worries. I understand. whatever was a big one, and it is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay. So just some things that just irritate you. Has anybody ever heard the one, somebody came up, everybody comes up at my session and used the word moist sometimes, and I don't know where that came from. Has anybody heard that one before? But I have no clue what it is. Okay. Hate that word. Okay. I see gross. Yes. Okay. We'll leave that alone. Let's move on. But I've never heard that before, but people have come up with those things too. So let's move on from there, and let me give you like 6 keys, and then we'll allow some time for questions here. Cause one of the key things to get along with people is people don't mind if you start a little late, but they kill you if you go overtime. So that's one of the rules of the road. You ever been to a meeting where people go overtime and it's like, it just takes everything away. So, because adults are very focused on time and they have other things to do. So we're going to move this quickly. But the next thing I want to do is give you just 6 things that you can do to get along and get everyone singing your praises. So how would you like that? We're going to give you those. So the next thing here, the first thing, and these are not in any order, but the first thing is attitude. And I don't mean to be touchy feeling, but everything does begin and end with your attitude when you really boil it down to it. For example, Hyatt hotels, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have at interviews, if you went to an interview and you did not smile at least 5 times in a 5-minute interview, they would not hire you, for example. I think Disney World had a situation too, where if they see one of the characters being upset that day, they wouldn't fire them, but they take them off, because you know what? When your body language and tone is upset, it triggers everybody else to feel bad too. So that aspect of it makes a difference. So let me give you 2 ways to keep your attitude adjusted at all times. Because I know every time, we go down a little bit, we're upset, things happen. And so let me give you 2 things that mainly make a difference. The first thing is called the flip side exercise. And I did this a long time ago with National and Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. This was about 15 years ago. And we did this for actually a year program, a big customer service program. And we gave everybody at the airport a little black book. This was from the drivers to the managers to anybody else. And in the black book, they had to write what was the flip side. So somebody yelled at me, well, there's a good side. Well, what is this? There's a good side. And after a while, it starts going into your system. So for example, if you hated your job, the flip side of that is, at least I've got a job. Okay. So you can think of that. Or let's say you're stuck in traffic. Well, I'm stuck in traffic. Well, the good side of that is I can listen to more tapes, or, I've got a good excuse for being late at work. These things can go through your mind. Or you put a dent in your new car. Well, at least I got a car. I mean, there's so many things you can look at. And after a while, you start looking at the flip side of that. The second thing I would suggest to keep your attitude adjusted at all times is to count your blessings. And I don't know how many, I'd love to see how many of you do this, just if you could put this in the chat thing, is asking yourself this question. You may want to write this down, because this changed my life a long time ago. And by the way, if you see it, I even have this on my cup, show gratitude. So if you can see that, but I ask myself, if something's going wrong, I say, what am I grateful for at that moment? And just by curiosity, how many of you do that? Daily, I appreciate my blessings. I'm saying that. Yes, I do that. Yes, I do. Pollyanna, there's always a good thing that happens. So, and if you do that, it takes you away, because, we get upset, about things happening. We get upset what people do. And it's like, and I'll come to myself and, geez, I'm so, somebody else is, let's say somebody had an accident somewhere in front of us and we're so upset. And we're getting, our attitude's getting things because we're stuck in traffic. Well, what about the person who's stuck in traffic, the person who caused it? I should just be thankful that I'm not in that accident. So look at the positive side of things. So look at the flip side is one thing that you can do to keep your attitude adjusted all times. And the second thing is ask yourself, what am I grateful for at this moment? So keep things to do. And by the way, one of the things I would mention too, a lot of us for physiological reasons get upset at other people. And I want you to think about this. There's an acronym, and you may want to write this down. It's called HALT. HALT. And when I say HALT, a lot of times we get upset at other people when we don't mean to, is because the H is because we're hungry. And how many of you ever been hungry sometimes? We just get, we're going to talk to somebody, we're starved, and then we start treating everybody that way. We start getting angry. What do you want? What do you do? So it's because we're starved. So I always eat before I have a meeting, or I have a conflict, or I have to confront somebody. Second thing is angry. How many of you have ever gone into work, for example, and you're already angry? You had a fight with your partner or your spouse or your kids or somebody else. and you go in, or you had a tough day getting, and so you're starting off on a bad note and you're yelling at people. Lonely, and what I mean by lonely is that the thing, this is a really big key part now, is the connection. We need those daily connections, even whether it's by Zoom or something, join groups, do a meetup, do something, because it starts to trigger on us aspect of it. And again, I remember when I first went into the Zoom world, it was like, oh God, I'm missing all these people. And it was sort of a little depressing. So I understand that. And then you start taking it out on others. And then the last thing is tired. The T is tired. I used to do all these trips from California and overseas sometimes, and I take these all-night flights, and I would never answer the phone the next day, because once you answer the phone the next day, guess what happens? You're starting to like, oh God, what do you want? This, because it's the tiredness triggers you. So just watch out. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, think about that before you start getting into either a difficult conversation or any conversation, or have to talk to somebody, because you're going to trigger some reactions. And, you want to talk about your get along IQ. It's going to go down at that point. So the next thing, so that was attitude. Second thing is be reliable and responsive. And I'm going to run through these. Do what you say you're going to do. Do it when you say you're going to do it. Do it right the first time. Get it done on time. I always remember this I was in Hawaii one time doing a program, and I saw this on the back of a garbage truck talking about being reliable. It said, "We guarantee complete satisfaction or double your money back." So how do you like that as a guarantee? Keep that in mind. Third thing to get people singing your praises and get along with everyone is to be credible and be trustworthy. And what I mean by trustworthy, there's an old saying, don't rust your trust. It takes years to build and seconds to break. And how many of you ever dealt with somebody like that? You just, you don't trust them. Once they lie to you, it's over at that point. And when I talk about trust, there's three things people are judging you by in reference to trust. And the first thing is competence. What I mean by competence, or do you do good a job? Do you know more about, for example, have you ever gone into a computer store to ask questions and you know more about than the person selling you the computer? That takes away all my trust at that point. Second thing is integrity and honesty and not lying, character. For example, I do some work with police departments, and in police departments, one of the first things they say is never, never lie. And what happens, they say you can wreck the car, you can do something else, you can yell at somebody, but if you wreck the car, tell us you wrecked the car, but don't lie about anything. So it's the character is important. And then the third thing is benevolence. So it's competence, it's integrity, and it's benevolence. And what benevolence means is caring. If you don't care about me, I don't what? I don't care about you. So you need to show you care. So trust is a key thing on that aspect of it. And I mean, just for a fun thing here, it's interesting. I saw this in the paper the other day. Did anybody see this? This was in the news the other day about an 11-year-old boy who faked his kidnapping. Did anybody catch that one? I'm not sure if I see any marks down here, but it said an 11-year-old boy faked his kidnapping Friday to avoid bringing home a bad report card. He said a man with a pistol snatched him from school. The boy said the man forced him to a car and threatened to kill him. He escaped by jumping out of the car, but wasn't able to grab his book bag, which contained his report card. He ran home to his grandparents' house and later confessed to lying. So again, the integrity matters, and you need to do that type of aspect of it. And then the two last things, appearance. Another thing that gets people make up their minds about you instantly. And when I say appearance, there's an old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. What does everybody do? They judge a book by its cover. So you need to take a look at that aspect of it there right away. And then the last thing is empathy. And this is a big one right now too, especially from people. I'm seeing a lot of people working from home constantly who need the other interaction and they're not getting it. And you need to look at the elephant in the room first before you start getting into sometimes conversations that go with it. And so when we talk about empathy is taking the perspective of the other person. And how many of you heard that saying, walk a mile in my shoes? Everybody's probably heard that one before. But here's what I want to take a step forward with you and say, go beyond that. Say this, before you walk a mile in my shoes, you need to take off yours first. Because here's what happens. A good example of this, and I don't want to get into politics or anything, so I'm not looking for reactions to this, but there was a football player named Colin Kaepernick a few years ago who took a knee during the national anthem at a football game. And immediately, what did people do? They either said, I like it or I hate it. I think he's terrible. I think he's great. I think he's terrible or I think he's great. But what people didn't do is they didn't sit back a little bit and say, why is he even doing that first? What's the reasoning behind that before you make up their mind? So you need to take a good look at that aspect of it. So that was empathy in that aspect of it. So that's a key word. And then the other one, because I think did I miss one here? I'm not sure, but I think I got them all. Maybe it was just that, but anyway, so those are the things that you need to look at. And by the way, when empathy, watch out that you don't, the big thing I see a lot of times, something happens to somebody, like somebody lost somebody the other day who died, and they started saying, well, I know how that feels because when this person died, and guess what happens? They start talking and they start hijacking the conversation on that aspect of it too. By the way, I see from some of the things, I only had 5. I do want to give you one more. So let me say when I said 6, and this is the one I'd leave you with today, and then we'll take some questions from you. Be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind. And it's interesting because I was in a CEO I was coaching the other day, and that was the first thing on his desk. It said, be kind, be kind, be kind. And if you can make, and to take that a step further, I always like this quote by Maya Angelou, who stated, and this is, if you want to get along, here's the crux of the whole thing. She said, people forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Let me repeat that again. People forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so put that, be kind, be kind, be kind to everybody there. And so what I want to do is, before I turn this back to Daryl and see if he wants to put some more points in here or questions that you may have, I want to leave you with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi. And I do want to say too, before ending, if you like this kind of stuff, I do have these 2-minute tips e-zines that go out every week that they're free. And if you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe. But I will give anybody who signs up for that a free PDF electronic copy of my book, Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere, which goes into everything. I think all the questions on I couldn't answer right away here. I have a lot of good information. Some people asked about bullies. I have a whole thing on how to deal with bullies at work. I actually do seminars and workshops on that. And these are all in the program there too, or coach people like that too. So I'm seeing all the things that you had. So if you want that, just sign up on with Daryl on that, or go to speaker@arnoldsano.com and do that. But here's what I want to leave you with. Mahatma Gandhi said, the best people who get along tend to be nurturers. And when I say nurturers, I don't mean to be touchy-feely about this, but we have a number of constituencies. You have your coworkers, you have your employees, you have your customers, you have your bosses, you have your family and friends. And family and friends are just important, because if we don't get along with them, it affects everything we do everywhere else. And he said this, everyone is like a plant in the water, and if you don't water and feed them, they won't grow. And he said this, he said, keep your thoughts positive because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive because your words become your actions. Keep your actions positive because your actions become your habits. Guard your habits and keep them positive because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive because your values become your destiny. And he said, remember that every day is a new beginning, and we must always remember that the nurtured seed always produces the abundant harvest. So I'm going to turn this over to Daryl, and I hope you have an abundant harvest all the way through.
Well, thank you, Arnold. And as Arnold mentioned, we do have a couple minutes that Arnold's willing to stay around to take some questions. So so please, if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. But to kick it off, Arnold, you spoke on trust, and trust is obviously a key component of getting along.
Right.
One of the questions in the chat was how do you communicate or get along with a person that's lost your trust?
A person who's lost, so you're saying a person who's lost your trust at that point. Yeah, at that point, you need to actually, and I've seen this with other people I've worked with, because that does come up quite a bit. And I've worked with people who are untrustworthy. And so one of the reasons I'm coaching them is because of that. So what they need to do is, what I had one time with one person is, I went around and I said, you need to apologize to everybody you've offended in this organization. And he had to do that first. And to get their trust, and tell them what you did. So he needed to come clean about what he did and apologize. And then he had to be right. And he says, here's what I'm going to do in the future. I do this, this, this. If you have any questions, bring it up at this point in time. If you resent something, let me know about that. And it's sort of like something that was uncomfortable for him to do. but he had to do that. So I had him go and actually say, go to every person around the same and say, what he did, and then also give them a plan of what he's going to do in the future. So a lot of this is communication. It's not just what's said, that it's what's not said. And a lot of times the trust comes from not saying things or doing some things, and people may not know where you're coming from. So you got to watch out for that.
Thanks, Arnold. Yeah, looking through the chat, I'm not seeing other questions, but I'm seeing a lot of awesome presentation. Thank you, Arnold. Great tips, very insightful. Okay, let's see, we've got one here.
And by the way, if people want that, because some people say, can I get those quotes and stuff? If you sign up for the newsletter and get the book, and I'll send a summary to each person too of that. So a summary of some of the key points we went over.
Here's one, Arnold, from Carol. How do I change the perception being too nice equates to weakness?
How do I change the perception of being too nice? And sometimes there's times to be nice, and there's times when you need to take action. So for example, a good example of this, there was a woman, for example, who was called, her boss kept calling her honey all the time, kept calling her honey and calling her honey. She was really nice about it. And then one day she was just going to burst. And so what happens is she took a step further. She said, and she said it in the right way. You have to talk to people in the right way. And she said, Jim was his name. I feel uncomfortable when I'm called honey. So you state what you're stating right away. I feel uncomfortable by honey. I would appreciate it if you would call me Paula, which actually changed the whole thing. He says, well, I didn't know that was upset. So that was a nice thing. But let's say he didn't change. So this is when you take it a step further. So Jim, we went over this. You're still calling me honey. I think we should have a meeting with our boss. And again, say it in those tones where we get it together. Then if he doesn't do it the third time, you say, Jim, we've gone through this a couple of times already. I think we should get with the FBI, the EEO, the FCIA, taking it a step further, but you start out being nice as you can, but then you don't want to be a pushover when somebody's either, especially with a bully. I've dealt with that quite a bit with people who have been bullied, and bullies you're not nice to at all. You just say, I don't respect that. I don't like you to talk to me that way. You should never talk that way. And they usually have low self-esteem, and that's the reason why they're doing that. So you need to punch. I don't want to say punch, no violent stuff, but you punch out the words. You're not going to be nice at that point in those cases.
Well, thank you very much, Arnold. And I think we reached the end of our time, but I want to thank you for your time. This is certainly time well spent. Amazing insights you shared with all of us today, and we certainly appreciate that. I want to our audience, thank you for your participation and being with us here at the Community Online Academy. Again, if you want to sign up for the 2-minute tips e-zine and get the free PDF copy of Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere, then please go to this. You can sign up at speaker@arnoldsanow.com, or if you want to just drop your email in the chat here, we'll share the chat log with Arnold, and we can get to that way as well. So as I mentioned before the session, would love to get your feedback on the session. Got a lot of it in the chat. It's all very, very positive from attendees, but love to get your feedback in the app. Also, I'd like to get feedback too, how I can do a better job to make this a better experience for you at the Community Online Academy. So I'd ask you to leave feedback, not only for Arnold, but also for me. And if you'll bear with me and hang on here, I will share my screen and go to a slide here where you can start leaving the chat. So I want to thank you again, Arnold, for a great session.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen, everybody, and we're going to put up a slide that'll show how to leave feedback. And again, for those of you that are very familiar with using the feedback app, you've been with us before at the Community Online Academy, this will be helpful to you so that you can go in and just start leaving feedback. Let's see here, my computer doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see the screen there. And if you take your phones and you take the camera on the phone, you scan the QR code, it'll take you right into the feedback app. It'll take you right to Arnold. It'll even populate the meeting tag for you. Get along with anyone, anytime, anywhere. I encourage you, those who are familiar with the feedback app, to go ahead and do that now. For those that are less familiar, after I show this slide, I'll do a quick demo of the feedback app on my phone and walk you through how to leave feedback in the app. So while you're waiting for this slide to come down, if you could go ahead and at least pull your phones out and get the feedback app ready to go, and I'll walk you through that in a moment. But I'll leave this up here for those that want to use the QR code to take them into the app. And again, my name is Daryl Platts. You can see it on the slide as well, and you can find me in the app as well, and I'd appreciate your feedback. This up here for a few more seconds. And I'm going to stop sharing. Now I'm going to share my phone. So hopefully everybody can see my screen here. This is the home page of the feedback app. So at the bottom, you'll see a menu of options. In the center, you see a plus sign, and that plus sign is the give feedback button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press that, and I'll get a search bar that comes up. In the top, I'm going to type in Arnold. It's a mind of its own. Arnold Sano. And there Arnold comes up, so I'm going to select him. And that'll open up this page here. And for those of you that use the QR code, it took you right to this page. It populated the meeting tag for you. In this case, we're doing it manually, so we'll have to select that. So to select that, I'm going to tap on that field, and that'll open up this menu here. And you can see what we're looking for. It's to get along with anyone, anytime, anywhere. So I'm going to select that. If for some reason it wasn't up here, you could click see more, and then you could do a search for it. But in this case, it's right there. So we're going to select it, and you can see it's populated. So now what I'd ask you to do is to give Arnold a numeric grade 1 through 4. 1 is below expectations, 2 meets expectations, 3 exceeds expectations, and 4 far exceeds expectations. And then in the comment field below, if you could provide comments that support the numeric grade that you're giving. And, please, comment on what you liked about the presentation, maybe what you didn't like about the presentation, and maybe what you'd like to see more of. When you're ready to submit the feedback, in the upper right is a post button. That is the submit button. So you can just hit post. 2 points about the feedback app. It is anonymous, so nobody can see who wrote what feedback. But it is transparent. So everybody can go into the feedback app, see Arnold, and see the feedback that he receives. So if you could take a moment and do that, please, we'd greatly appreciate it. I'll put my name in here too if you'd like to give me feedback on how I can make this experience better. Please do, and I'll just drop my name in here. For me, you'll want to make sure that you've got the all option at the top selected to find me, and then my name is Daryl, 2 R's, E, 2 L's, and then last name is Platts, P-L-A-T-Z. And there I am. So you can select me if you'd like to get me feedback as well. So I will stop share now, and I will again thank you all for joining us today. And for those new to Community Online Academy, we hope to see you back with us again. We run this every Thursday, 5 a.m. To 9:45 p.m. We're running sessions. So love to have you as part of our community. All right. Well, thank you again, Arnold.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. And I will go ahead and end the session. Thank you all again.
Okay, thank you.
And Arnold, I will send you the chat log too with all the email addresses as well.
Okay, so should I stay on with you at all or not at this point?
No, we'll follow. The team will follow up with you after.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll say goodbye to everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank